Hello, and welcome to the Inflectra webinar, today on SpiraPlan 6.4 and 6.5. My name's Adam Sandman, and I'll be presenting today on the functionality that's going to be coming in version 6.4, which is coming out in a week or two, and also a preview of what's going to be coming out in version 6.5 in about a month or two's time once it's ready. So again, we're going to be looking at version 6.4 of Spira, which is coming out very, very soon, and then a preview of what will be coming out a little bit further out in version 6.5. If anyone you know couldn't make today's webinar, we are doing a second one this afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern time, and also a copy of this will also be available on our YouTube channel to refer to later. We will do questions at the end, but for right now, sit back and relax as we'll be going through some functionality, both presentation and a live demo. And if you want to write your questions, you can do so during the presentation. They will sit in the questions box, and I will get to them at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do is I'm going to introduce a little bit of background on the new features in both 6.4 and 6.5. For 6.4, the main functionality we've added is support for the Oauth single sign-on platform. We've also made some enhancements to the reporting system. And after that, we'll then go into a preview of what's going to be in 6.5. And I said 6.5 is a bit further out, so what you'll be seeing is effectively a live alpha version of the application. And for those of you who came to InflectraCon, we did give a slight preview of some of this functionality then, but we're much further along now, and this is actually a live alpha version we'll be demoing. Okay, so first of all, 6.4, and this will be coming out in the March 14th cloud update, and will be available in about a week's time for download customers. So what we've introduced in version 6.4 primarily is Oauth authentication. And Oauth authentication is a single sign-on platform. And in this diagram, you can see how it works conceptually. But the idea is instead of logging in to a SpiraTest, SpiraTeam, or SpiraPlan with a login directly managed by Spira, you can use an external authentication system. So you can basically log in to Spira using a different account provider like Microsoft or Google, and we'll go through which ones we support and what's coming out in the next version. And you can basically use that to log into Spira instead of using a Spira account. And this means that as a company, you can have a centralized place where all your users and passwords are managed. And if someone leaves the company, you can turn them off in one place, and every other system that uses that will then respect that. So it simplifies administration and also improves compliance. Now in Spira, we already have support for LDAP and Active Directory, which is great for on-premise customers. But one of the challenges being when you're using the cloud, you want the benefits of single sign-on and the benefits of centralized management of your users, but you don't want to have to open up your network to the cloud. So the great thing is that Oauth allows you to do that without necessarily moving your Active Directory infrastructure to the cloud or having to use, and it allows you also to use other services from things like Google and GitHub and GitLab as well. So it gives you a lot of different options for single sign-on. And the great thing with Spira's implementation is you'll be able to use a mixture of these different modes. So you'll be able to have users that use Oauth single sign-on, LDAPs and Active Directory, and also native Spira logins as well. So it doesn't have to be everything converted over. You can mix and match the different modes depending on your needs. We'll get more into how it works from the user interface when we actually go into the application. But before we do that, let's just show a little bit of how it works conceptually. The way it works is inside of Spira, you're going to have different providers. And so you'll have different providers that you as a company choose to make active. So you might decide to do Google, you might decide to use Okta, you might decide to use multiple, it's up to you. Whatever you as a company decide to make active, you manage in Spira, and then it becomes an option for your users to log in with instead of just using a login and password. And if those providers support multi-factor authentication, which many of them do, you also get the benefits of multi-factor authentication as well. So what do we currently have? In the version that's coming out on March 14th, that's version 6.4, we will be providing support for Google, Okta, GitLab, and GitHub. Those four are the ones that will be coming out in the next release. Now, we also know that two of the most high priority ones that we haven't yet implemented are the Microsoft platforms, and there's two: Microsoft Azure AD, which is the system you have if you're using Microsoft's Azure platform, so cloud-based systems. The other one is Microsoft Active Directory Federated Security, or ADFS, and that's the one you often have if you're using Active Directory on-premise, but you want to extend it out into the cloud without opening up Active Directory through LDAP. And those are two that we've had a lot of feedback on that people are looking for. So that is planned, and we will be having a point update. The version number is to be determined, but it most likely will be 6.4.0.1 or maybe 6.4.1, one of the two, and that will be released relatively soon after the main release. So you may have to wait about a month or so. We actually have already developed that functionality. It's just in final testing, and we didn't want to delay the main release to get that all tested. So we're going to release 6.4 with the 4 initial providers, and then a short time afterwards, we'll be releasing a minor update, which will add in 2 additional providers for Azure and ADFS. And how it will work is when you go to a login screen, whatever you've enabled as a company is now visible below the main login page. And when we do the live application, I'll show you how this looks. But conceptually, you can log in with the main username and password with the yellow button, or you can log in with one of the providers underneath, and whatever providers your company is enabled will be displayed in that gray box. And then you log in, and then use that instead of your Spira login and password. So that's a little bit about Auth. Again, we're going to have a live demo shortly, so don't worry about it too much for now. And the second big enhancement we've done is around reporting. And the reporting enhancements really consist of 2 things. The biggest and most important is we've added a central release dropdown on the main reports dashboard. Previously, 1 or 2 of the graphs could be filtered by release, and most of the others could not. And the ones that could be filtered by release couldn't be filtered by other things. So we've now centralized all of the release filtering on a single dropdown. All the graphs, including custom reports, can now use the release dropdown to filter the data by release, which can include child releases if appropriate, or sprints, and also allows us to have a few other filters available, for example, test case type filter that wasn't previous because it was being used by the release. So we basically standardized release filtering on the dashboard, so a lot more of the graphs and charts can now be viewed at a product level, a release level, or a sprint level, whereas previously they could not. And we'll show you those live as well. And the last thing we've done on the reporting is we've also improved the Microsoft Word report format. For those who've been using the tool for a while, you will know that there were 2 formats. We called it 2003 and 2007. We then renamed them XML and HTML. And basically, one of the Word formats gave you rich text but no images, and one gave you images but no rich text. We now have a single format we call MS Word only that now gives you both images and rich text. And so therefore, we have now renamed the one that just gives you the images without the rich text, but still useful in some ways, legacy, so for those customers. And the reason why we have the legacy format around is there is still a limitation in Microsoft Word. If you're using Microsoft Word 2003 or older, you won't get the images in the new format, only in the legacy format. But if you're using Microsoft Word 2016 or later, or MS Word 365, then you can just use the new MS Word report and get everything in one. So that's basically 6.4. Just to recap: OAuth, single sign-on, and reporting improvements. Now let's look ahead a little bit at 6.5. Now this release is coming out in a couple months' time, and it's focusing on primarily program and portfolio management, plus some enhancements to the release and task views. And for those customers using SpiraTest, unfortunately, you won't get any of this new functionality. It's only for our Spira team and SpiraPlan customers. And some of the functionality will be only in SpiraPlan. Some of it will be in both SpiraPlan and Spira team. So if you like what you see and you have SpiraTest, or maybe you want some of the portfolio management and you're on Spira team, do let us know. We can let you know how much it would cost to upgrade to SpiraPlan. So what we've added in the system is a new level called portfolios, which is above a program. You can now roll up your programs into portfolios. You can also have an enterprise-wide view of all your different portfolios and programs, and we'll show you this live. And we've got new dashboard widgets, some of which we previewed in Inflectra and lets you look at the overall completion. So in the past, you would primarily look at completion of like test cases. Are my requirements tested? Is my release tested? Do I have tasks that are done? there was no overall completion at a product level, at a program level, and certainly not even at a release level. And so we've now consolidated those metrics into a new single metric, which is completion percentage of a release, a product, a program, a portfolio, and then you can view that at different levels. So that way you get a top-down project and program management view of the system. We've also added additional widgets at the program and product levels. So the existing dashboards have been improved, and the program dashboard, they used to just have one view, now has a general development and testing view, and we've different widgets available. So we've expanded out the functionality available at the program level. We've also added at the product level, so this is available in both Spira Team and SpiraPlan, we've added a Gantt chart view of releases. So we've had a board view, we've added a Gantt chart view, we've also added a mind map view, and I'll show you these live. And then lastly, for the tasks page, which already had a grid view and a board view, we've also added for waterfall projects a Gantt chart view. So now if you have a agile project, you can use the grid or the Kanban board. If you've got a waterfall project, you can use the grid or the Gantt view. So we have these different views to handle different kinds of projects. So that's the PowerPoint. We're now going to move into the live application. So moving over here into my browser over here, I'm first going to be looking at 6.4, which is in this browser tab. And I've gone in as an administrator and set the system up ahead of time. So what you will need to do as a user is if you want to use Oauth, you will need to go into this new section we call Manage Login Providers. And you can see here, we've basically enabled, in this case for today's demo, GitHub, and we've enabled Okta. I've disabled Google, GitLab, Azure AD, and the system comes with a dummy provider, and that's the one we use for demoing with. And that one I can use to show you how you set these up. You go in here and you put in, for each of the providers, you'll put in a client ID and a client secret, and you'll get that from Google or Okta, whichever tool you're using. When you register your account with them, they will tell you what client ID and client secret key you're using. And the secret key potentially may expire, so you may have to come back and get a different one. That's up to you how that's managed. For some of the providers, there will be standard URLs. So for example, things like Google and GitHub and GitLab, there's a single URL which we preload, and that's always changed. That doesn't change. For some of the providers like Okta, which is an enterprise solution, you would set up different authorization and token and profile URLs depending on the account you have with Okta. It's not a single URL, so you would enter in here. And once you've done that as an administrator, that's it set up. It's a one-time setup, and now you're ready to go. So what your user would then experience is they would go over here. So I'll go to a new browser tab in the incognito mode, so we're not logged in already. Let's go ahead, and they will see, for example, Okta or GitHub. So let's go ahead and we'll do GitHub first. So I click on GitHub, and hopefully it will go here. And if you have a GitHub account, which you would need to have, otherwise you have to register with GitHub first, you would then go in and log in with GitHub. So let's do that. And the icon here is showing you that it's actually SpiraPlan that's requesting this. Let's go over here, and I'll go into GitHub with my login, my password. And now that I've logged in successfully with GitHub, it now needs to know, what do I do with this user? So if this was an existing Spira user that previously had logged in with a login and password, then I would simply say link an existing user. I need to know its password, obviously, to do that. The other thing I can do is I can register a completely brand new user with this option instead. So we'll go ahead and do that. Let's register a new user. And depending on the provider, different information may be pre-populated from that provider. So it's giving me the name, the last name that comes from GitHub. The email address I need to put in again, it doesn't actually use that. So let's go get that from here and put that in. And now I will do submit. And it submits it as a new request. Now, even though I have registered with GitHub and I've requested to be access to Spira, my account may not be appropriate. It may be someone else who's not authorized. So even though I have done that, it still requires, for security, the administrator go in, and just like you would do from a normal request from a user, you go into pending requests, and you get an email as administrator, of course, as well. You go in here and you say approve or basically delete. In this case, I do want to approve that request, so I hit approve. Excellent. So now what I will do is go back into Spira's login page, and now I've did that, I can hit GitHub again. And I'm logged in, and that's it. And that's all you have to do. And it takes the avatar from the provider. Some of the providers actually let you access the avatar, so you automatically get your GitHub or GitLab or Google avatar automatically transferred into Spira. And it will, in this case, it says no workspace found because I haven't been assigned a project or a product or a program. That's fine. That obviously administrator would have to do that part as well. But I now have an authentication into the system. Now let's say I don't want to use GitHub anymore. I want to use Okta. How would I do that? Well, what I had to do is go back to my profile, and I go in here and I would go to account security and I would unlink the account. When you unlink the account, you have to actually tell the system what your password is, because I registered with Okta for security, sorry, with GitHub, and for security, we can't access that password. So I need to put in a new password. So I'm going to just use please change. Please don't use that for real. And the question will be, what is 1 + 1? The answer is 2. Unlink my account. So now if I wanted to log in, I would log in with my email address and please change. I don't actually want to do that though. I'm going to now show you how you would log in with Okta. So let's do Okta. Okay, Okta's here. Different login page, but same conceptually. And this time I'm going to log in with my Okta email, which is over here, and my Okta password, which is over here. Great, same thing again. It's a new Okta user. Spira does not know which Spira user that maps to. This time I'm going to link it to an existing user. So now I will use my username, and I have to use the email address that the Spira account is expecting. And I will use please change. And that proves that I know that account. It's not me trying to guess. And then it will go to plan. Yep, log me in with that user. So now I've logged in with Okta. So I can log in now with either Okta or GitHub, or in fact, just so I don't forget, for the webinar this afternoon, I'm going to unlink it so I can do it all over again. And so to do that, you just need to go in here and go. So every time you unlink it, you will have to recreate the security information. So there we go. So I've now logged in with both Okta and GitHub. And I, in one case, created a brand new account. In the other case, I simply linked an existing account. So that's how you would use the Oauth functionality inside of Spira. Now, you still, inside of Spira, do have to use the Spira role management system. So if you're going to assign a user to a product, you have to do that within Spira. You also have to assign them a role using Spira. That's all within managed within Spira. What you're basically getting is the authentication side of things. And also, if you notice and you go to view edit users, we have added a new column called external login. And I should have done this before I unlinked it, but it's okay. In here, you would see in this column, is the user using LDAP? Are they using a native provider, or are they using an OAuth provider? So you can see here at any given time what login that person is using in the list page. And if you go to their user page, you can do the same thing here. So that's the Oauth functionality. Now, the other thing we did in version 6.4 is we also worked on the reporting side. So if we go into let's go into the sample library information system, which you should be familiar with from all the demos, and let's look at reporting. So the big change is we added this release dropdown. So previously, for those who remember this, the old version, you would have a release dropdown like this on some of the widgets. So if you went to, for example, the testing date range graph widget, you could choose to show this graph. Do I want the progress rate, the case count, or the cumulative count? You can change that, which is fine. And you can filter that by release. And if you wanted to do the same thing for the incident report, you were out of luck because you could only do it for types of incidents. So now we've standardized it. All the release filtering is done here at the top, and we've standardized that where there are filters on the widget, they're widget specific. So the incident date range graphs still have their incident type filter. That did not change, but the test case version of it now has the test case types. So you can now filter by release and by test case type. And you can now filter by incident type and release. So you can always filter on both. Similarly, the burn down graphs and the burn up and the velocity graphs, they used to have a separate release filter here. That's also now been centralized. So we're now viewing the burn down for all the releases. And when I change the release filter at the report level, you'll see that it changed here. Now, there were some other graphs that we had, for example, the requirement summary graph, test case summary graph. Now, you could always choose the x-axis and the y-axis. So let's go ahead and choose x-axis as priority. Let's group by status. And let's group the x-axis by priority and the group by status. So you could always do that. That hasn't changed. But there was no way of filtering the data by release. And especially when it came to test cases, suppose you wanted to have only the tests that were ran in that release. There was no way because there's no actual filter for that and there's no group by for that. But now you can. So all you do is go over here to the main drop down. Let's choose release 1 and everything on the page changes to release 1 simultaneously. For the things like the date range graphs, that just filters the data down. So you'll notice the data here has changed. If I change it to release 1.1, the data will change again. You'll notice here on these release summary graphs and test case summary graphs, sorry, requirement summary graphs, we've now noticed that the data has changed. We no longer have all of the columns and all of the rows we had before. We now only have requirements that are actually in release 1.1, and we're showing them by priority or importance and status. And now only the test results are being shown, the same thing. So we're now filtering the test results by release, whilst the x-axis is priority and the group by is status. So we're grouping by execution status. We're showing the x-axis as priority, but we're ultimately filtering the data by execution status. And that's the first time you've ever been able to do that. And that's something that people wanted for 3 or 4 years, if not longer. So that's a really cool enhancement. Similarly, the graphs that did have releases in them, like the burn down, because I've chosen that release at the dashboard level, which is now available here in a sticky header, you can see that we're now showing the 3 sprints that are under release 1.1. And one thing you can do, which I'm not going to show you today, but is also in the system, is if you wanted to, you can create custom reports using the custom query editor. One of the challenges was if you wanted to include in that custom graph or report, I want to be able to filter by just the current release, you couldn't do it. You had to hard code the release ID. So you have to create that report for every single release you wanted to filter it on. Now you can create a standardized graph using the custom query syntax and use the variable for release, and it will automatically fill that out for you. And I'm not going to build a query, but if you want to see what that looks like, you just go into the edit graphs functionality. And when you edit a graph, you'll notice we always have this legend here that would say you can use the variables project ID and project group ID. We've added a second legend, which means you can now filter by release ID. If you want to filter a custom query with just a release, or more commonly, you might want to find all of the releases and their child sprints that are active and have that in the query. So you can do either. So for those of you that do like to use the query editor, we've now added those variables in as additional parameters to the queries. So that's an overview of 6.4. We're now going to jump ahead and do a preview of what's in 6.5. Now 6.5 is not ready for release. So what you're going to see today is an alpha version. So if it blows up on the screen during the demo, that is totally fine. It will be embarrassing, but it is fine because it is not ready for release. And this version is still undergoing some feedback. So some of what you're seeing today might change conceptually based on feedback from our testing team and our product steering committee. But certainly this is fairly close to what the final version will be like, but just there may be some tweaks. So what we've done, first of all, is on the My page, one of the things we found is we've added in the ability to group by portfolios and programs. So rather than it just being program and product, you now have an enterprise view, which I'll show you. You have different portfolios. Under the portfolios, you now have programs. Under the programs, you have products. So we've added essentially one more level. Previously, there were programs and products, which you can see over in the old version here. But we've now got one more level, which is portfolio. And when we found we did that, the My page got very cluttered because we were showing all the assigned products. And even in our sample data, there was like 30 products. So this widget became unusable. So we've actually redefined the My page slightly so that now, instead of showing all the assigned products for a user, we're going to show you the recent ones. So you'll see the recent products you've clicked on only. Similarly, as a user, I'm often clicking around and want to go back to something. So let's say I navigate to a test case. I go to a test case and I click on it like this. And now I go back to my page and I forget where was I last. I can use the browser back button. I can go here and go, browser back and go, where was I? But now it's here. So we're now going to be remembering the last projects and products and programs you were on, and also the last artifacts you touched. So from a usability standpoint, these two things are not directly related to the programs and portfolios, but we found as we start to build out the data set to make the system more usable, it made sense to make this change. So you will see that change. Now, the main functionality is concerned here at the program and portfolio level. So what we've done is added different dashboards. So let's start at the top. If we go to the enterprise view, you can now see all of the programs and all of the portfolios rolled up to the enterprise level. So in my entire Spira instance of all these active programs and products and releases, I can see how far along am I, what percentage complete are my requirements, in this case 4%, which is not really good. And I can also see, based on the dates of those releases, not only how far along are we in terms of the work completed, I can see how close is the end date, should we be done by now. So in these graphs, you're going to get an indication, not just how far along you are in terms of completion, but how does that relate to the date ranges. So for example, you might be halfway done with your requirements, but the end date's tomorrow. That sounds like it's going to be red. However, you might be 10% done, but all of your end dates for all of your projects are like 2 years from now. Well, then it'd be green, even though it might be a smaller percentage. So we're showing both the schedule and the completion and bring those metrics together. And then on the top right, we have another widget which lets you see for each of my portfolios, what is the completion, which is here on the right, and then what's the schedule. So you can see just the completion, how far along am I, or you can see it adjusted for schedule as well. So we have these two different views, and they give you a nice view, top-down view of all my work going on across the entire installation of Spira and what's the status. Until now, you really haven't had that view. You've had a product view and you've had a program view to some degree, but we haven't had a system-wide view. So this is the first system-wide view we added. You can also see the relative size of the different active portfolios. In this sample, we only have 2 portfolios that have any work in them. The rest haven't been built out yet with sample data. So that's why you're only going to see 2 here. Similarly, that's why these ones here don't have any data in them. But when we release the system, we're going to be expanding the sample data set to make it easier to see as well. And then the other thing we added is also a Gantt chart view, which lets you see all my different portfolios. And I can see under each portfolio, the program, under each program, the product. And if I choose one that's got some data in it, like the core services, you can see that my core services portfolio has a corporate systems program. Under that is a financials ERP system and an HR system. Under my sales and marketing portfolio, I've got the company website and our CRM system. And you can see the dates that those different products are starting and finishing. You can also see the percentage complete of each of those to see how far along we are. And the start and end date of the products will come from the active releases in those systems. So for example, if we go to financials, you'll notice we have 2 releases. One started here in March and finishes in August. The other one starts in August and finishes sometime around November. And then the product is showing you basically the span of those 2 plus any other child iterations or sprints they have. So that's how the dates are working. We're taking basically the span of all the active releases and sprints and releases and phases, rolling those up then to the product level, which then rolls up to the portfolio level, which then rolls up to the enterprise level. So this is a totally new top-down view of the whole system. Now, sometimes you don't want to look at the whole system. You just want to look at a particular portfolio. That's easy enough. You just click on the portfolio. We have the same dashboard with the same widgets for the most part. At a program level. Sorry, this is program. I want a portfolio. My mistake. Let me do that one. So this is the portfolio level. So I can now see just this one portfolio that has core services, and that has 2 programs. It has our corporate systems and our sales and marketing. And you can see the corporate systems is further along in terms of the percentage complete. The sales and marketing is a little bit further behind. You can see the relative sizes. Sales and marketing is actually much bigger, and that may be why it's further behind. You can see how far along we are in total. You can also see at the program level and the portfolio level, what are the open risks we have. So we added risk management in version 6. We've now got the ability to roll risks, not just to the program level that we do already, but also roll them up to the portfolio level as well. And we then have the same Gantt chart, but instead of it now showing all portfolios, it's just showing the 2 programs in our single portfolio. Okay, we can drill down one level further. So now we go to the program view. The program view, very similar widgets. We've got the completion of the 2 different products we have, the ERP financials, ERP HR. We can see the relative completion of our requirements. We can see the schedule. We can see the overall completion for the whole portfolio and program. You can see the relative size of the 2 products. But because this dashboard, the program dashboard, has some other widgets, you will see some additional things on here that you may be familiar with. We've got our requirements coverage widget. That's now available here too. we've got the open risks, we've also got the open issues, and we've got the schedule. So when integrating some of the existing widgets we had in the older version of Spira directly onto this dashboard. And for that reason, we actually now have 3 different flavors. We have this new view, the general view, and then we've also got a development view, which focuses on tasks, builds, issues, aging, defects. And we have a testing view that focuses on requirements coverage, the completion, test status. And as we add more widgets to these different dashboards, you're going to see each of these being built out in more detail. But as of right now, we will have an initial set of widgets at the program level covering general project management, DevOps and development, and then testing and QA. Also at the program level, we do have the same 3 artifact sections we had before, very similar to what you would have seen in the last version, except in the releases view, we have added some additional columns. If I show all levels, sorry, wrong one, show all levels, we've now got a completion percentage, which I'll show in it with some data in it in a second, where you can see the percentage complete of all the requirements by release. So if I go into, say, library information system, which is in the default program, right here, you'll see clear filters, show all levels. Oh, hold on a minute. 1 second. I actually want to do sample program. Show all levels. There we go. You can now see the percentage complete for all your releases, and you can do filters like show me anything that's less than 100% complete. It's like that. So that way we've got a new column. Previously, we could look at releases from a quality standpoint. Is this release tested? We could look at other tasks on track, other tasks behind, but there was no single project management metric. So we now have this single progress bar that shows you how far complete is this entire release or this sprint. And it's the exact same bar that we saw on the Gantt chart as well. Which now means, speaking of Gantt charts, if we go then into the product level, we've also made some changes. So as well as the new dashboards, if you go to the release page, we've always had this release view, which is the grid view, all my releases. Again, we now added this new column where you can see the percent complete. We've also added a new column for requirements count and a new column for the sum of the story points. People have asked for that. I want to be able to roll up all my story points to my releases and sprints. How many story points in the sprint versus the hours from the tasks? You can now do that. And similarly, you can now do that at the Gantt chart view by having a Gantt chart which shows you what's the progress bar and on a timeline. So it's just another view of releases. And the third view we added for releases to mirror what we added in requirements is a mind map. So we now have a hierarchical view where you can see all of your releases and sprints in a nice diagram. Just makes it easier to see conceptually. So let's go then into tasks. So at the task level, we've had, oops, let me not steal my thunder. We had the grid view of tasks where you can see all the tasks, what's behind, what's on track. You can see the end date, start dates, and so on. We added a board view in version 6, like that, the Kanban board for agile projects. So now for waterfall projects, we've also added a Gantt chart as well. So unlike the release one, which just looked at releases, this one will show you all the releases and sprints, but you can then drill it down and you can see all the individual tasks, and there's still, again, the same progress bar. So you can see how far along this sprint is 50% done. Well, these are the individual tasks. You can see this one is done, this one is done, this one is done, these 3 are not done, and that's what's contributing towards the sprint being half done. Now, as of this version, this is a read-only view. It's a beta view, so you'll be able to see all the sprints and see all the tasks and so on. We're going to be adding more functionality in the future where you'll be able to potentially drag and drop items. You'll be able to add dependencies, do start to finish, finish to start, track all that visually. So there's a lot of functionality we're going to be building on top of this. This is just the initial set of functionality. So that's an overview of what's coming in 6.5. There will be some other smaller enhancements and bug fixes, but for the most part, it's adding the new portfolio level, the enterprise view, the new dashboards at the program level and the product level. It's adding the new release views, which is basically the mind map view or the hierarchical view and the Gantt view. And on the tasks section, it's adding the Gantt chart view as well. So that's our main set of functionality coming out in 6.5, in addition to what we're releasing in about 2 weeks for 6.4. Again, thanks so much for attending today's webinar on Spira 6.4 and 6.5. Just to recap for those who joined late, 6.4 will be coming out on March 14th for cloud customers and a few days earlier for download customers. Go look at the download center on the customer area of our website to get the latest version. And 6.5 will be a few months from now. And there will be a minor release in the middle, a 6.5 4.1, which will include the Microsoft Azure AD and Microsoft ADFS extensions for OAuth to allow those two additional providers to work. If there are additional providers that we haven't covered, that is Google, Okta, GitHub, GitLab, ADFS, and Azure AD, do let us know. That way we can add it to our backlog for future releases. Those are the ones we found that most people were interested in. But again, if there's an additional OAuth provider that we have not thought about, do please let us know. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your day.